Thank you. That's why I have Todd here with me. Welcome. This is Cram. I'm the chair of the Utah Watersheds Council. Today is January 10th, 2023. It's just after 9 a.m. We successfully had a fire alarm test, and I think we're all good here. And we're convening at the Utah Department of Natural Resources Auditorium in West North Temple in Salt Lake City. This is our first quarter of 2023 meeting, and we're glad to have everyone with us, those here in person and those online. I guess let's just go around the table here for our council members, and then we'll go online and see who we have here. Chris, do you mind starting?
You bet. Good morning. Chris Hamlet. I'm the director of the Utah Division of Emergency Management.
Thank you, Chris.
Good morning, Warren Peterson.
That's all. Kind of like Beyonce is just like, usually it's Warren, does it?
Yeah, Warren.
Yeah.
Thank
you.
Okay.
Todd.
Stonley, Division of Water Resources.
Great. Good morning. Kim Shelley, Executive Director of Utah Department of Environmental Quality.
Thank you. Good morning. Marcel Shoup, National Audubon Society.
All right, thank you. And those online, if you could introduce yourselves as well.
Starting with Craig.
Yeah, Craig, do you want to start?
You bet. I'll start. Craig Butters, Commissioner of the Department of Agriculture and Food. Sorry, I can't be there with you. My meetings are overlapping today, so I'll be here at the department.
Well, thank you for doing what you can there. And then let's go next to Ken. Do we have Ken with us?
Yeah, Ken White, Utah State University.
Thank you. And Mark?
Mark Stratford, Jordan Valley Water, and I also apologize. I will probably have to leave the meeting a little bit early.
Well, glad to have you with us. You got your ears on there.
We also have a phone number
and we
ending in 66.
Yeah, we've got also somebody with a phone number there, an 801 ending in 66.
Yeah, Keith Denos, Provo River Water Users.
Oh, Keith, good to, I would say see you, but good to hear you and have you with us here.
That would be the
Thanks, Corey.
Yet retiring Keith Denos.
Is that the word? Okay.
Yeah, a few months.
All right. Has everybody got a copy of the agenda? Over here at the table there. And I guess if you got a copy there, we're going to propose we turn the agenda upside down a little bit. First thing is we were a little late getting out our meeting minutes from our last meeting, and so I'd like to propose that we switch approval of the minutes from our October 5th meeting down towards the end of the meeting, if that's okay, and maybe give people an opportunity to glance at that if that's possible. And then we Candice is listed at 10 a.m. to give us a little presentation. She has to go on the radio. She's like in demand today, like everybody else, but we'd like to switch Candice and Lauren, just to move Candice up a little bit, if that's okay. Okay, perfect. And then if it's all right, between what's listed as the 10:15 and the 10:30 slot, I'd like to give a few minutes to Andy Rasmussen, if that's all right. No Andy? We'll watch for Andy. Just to look for an opportunity to have an update on how things are going with our creation of our local watershed groups, and just hear how things are going out on the street. If that's all right with everybody with those changes, I'd accept a motion to accept that agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All right, got a motion from Chris and a second from Warren. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, we did the electronic pause, didn't hear anything. Any opposed? All right, thank you. Motion passes. With that then, let's go to Warren and want to talk about some ideas and some recommendations for Warren with some revisions to the act.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm quite willing to defer to later in the meeting if you...
I think schedule-wise, we're good.
Okay. All right. Well, we covered these in the last meeting, but they were not on the agenda with sufficient specificity that we've added them to the agenda this time. But one was to add the state engineer to seek an amendment to the Watershed Councils Act to designate the state engineer as a non-voting member of the state council. And then there was also a discussion about adding a land planning agency, whether that would be a county or a city, a local government entity that has land use planning authority to the Watershed Council so that they can provide that viewpoint. That would be to the local watershed councils. Now, and as I recall, both of these were approved in concept at the last meeting. They were added here to basically ratify that action. I will say that since the last meeting, I've had a little pushback on the idea of adding a local land use planning authority agency to the local watershed councils, and it's not particularly because of the role of that addition, but just the fact that that another seat's being added to local councils. I think I'd answer that by saying in the original act, we've set out that the local councils could add sufficient number as necessary to accomplish the needs of that council. So I have had that pushback, but I think we anticipated that sort of thing anyhow in the original act, so I'd recommend that we go ahead with a motion or I'd request that we go ahead with a motion to approve each of these items as proposed amendments to the statutes and then seek a sponsor to implement those changes.
Can I ask just a couple of points of clarification?
Yes.
So you have here listed, and I think as you explained it, the idea and the approach would be either an entity, a land use, a local planning agency that could be municipal or county,
Yes.
and just keep that broad as one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And then and then the note on the agenda to try to include that in the membership. So a recommendation to include that, or as a mandatory member, or what are you looking at there?
As to the local watershed council?
Yeah.
Just an enabling.
So an
provision.
encouragement to seek out that person, add them, but not a requirement to have that on the council?
That's what I would anticipate,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
So if unless there's discussion, then Mr. Chair, I would move that we seek amendment to the statute as discussed in the last meeting and as stated on the agenda here.
All right, we have a motion from Warren to add the state engineer as a non-voting member and to add a land use planning agency to be recommended to include in the local membership. Is there a second to that?
This is Mark Stratford. I would second that.
All right, we've got a motion and a second.
Just a quick note, for those online, do a roll call for them.
Oh, thank you.
Is there a discussion? I just have a question.
Sure, any discussion? Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm sorry if I got my order mixed up on the way to go, but I couldn't remember from the last meeting, I couldn't recall. Is the state engineer willing to serve in that role? And I can't remember what we talked about there, so it's not one more, I hope it's not one more burden for the state engineer who's extremely busy, but if it's, I see the value, I just wanted to double check.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, I can say that I've spoken with the state engineer and she indicated interest in that, but my statement is hearsay. We have a direct witness here. Perhaps we should inquire.
Please.
We need a mic.
Come on. Yeah, we're being recorded, if you don't mind.
Warren, I think it might be a statement against interest, so it might be excluded from the hearsay rule.
Thank you for that clarification, Mark. Yes, I agree.
And thank you, Teresa Wilhelmsen. Yeah, I think we definitely have plenty on our plate, but I think this is important in that a lot of at least my understanding, is a lot of entities and water policymakers are going to be looking to this group. And I think having the state engineer as a non-voting member, obviously I can't be bound by decisions that come out of the councils, but being part of that and contributing to the conversations to help have water rights part of the conversation, I think is going to be helpful. So we're willing to do that, happy to participate and look forward to it actually. So. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question, and Teresa, thank you for being here and your willingness to participate. We appreciate that, and I think that is a very valuable contribution and role you can play there. Any further discussion? All right, we'll go back. We have a motion and a second. Let's go ahead and vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 And then I guess we'll do a roll call for those online. Let's start with Craig
Yes.
and Ken
Yes.
and Mark.
Yes.
And is there anybody else we have? Okay. All right, motion passes. Thank you. And thank you, Warren, for pursuing that. Appreciate that. So next we have Candice, if you're willing and able. And can you give us just a really quick thumbnail, how we doing water-wise? Utah and Colorado River Basin, if you don't mind. I mean, it's a happy message for a change, right? This is a good time to be giving a presentation on this.
Yes, thank you. Yes, Candice Hasenyager, Director at the Division of Water Resources. Happy to be with you all today and excited to report that we're doing pretty darn good as far as our snow water equivalent. Statewide, we're 176% of average. We still have a long ways to go, and I'm hopeful that as I look into the weather forecast, I keep seeing storms on the horizon. So I just think keep this coming. And I know I've heard from a number of people that their backs were a little tired from shoveling, and I said, bite your tongue. Make your back strong.
So reason for optimism would that be a good characterization?
Yes, definitely. Anything is helpful at this point, for sure. Let me load up my presentation. Today on the agenda, I'm here to chat with you about cloud seeding. How many of you, as I'm pulling this up, are familiar with cloud seeding? Looks like a number of folks, so that's super. I did kind of start this presentation kind of at a high level, just in case some folks aren't familiar with it. It looks like that presentation is coming up. Great. So cloud seeding, it's really, how can we pull additional moisture out of the sky, the atmosphere? And when we look at cloud seeding activities across the West, they're all over. It is not just a Utah thing. They are done in, toward the Midwest and then also all throughout the West. There's two main types and purposes for cloud seeding. One is wintertime augmentation, so trying to get more snowflakes. And the other one is a warm season cloud seeding that is usually hail suppression. And as you look at this map that kind of shows the western United States, you'll notice Alberta, Calgary has quite the warm season cloud seeding program up there. And it's interesting to note, if you looked at who pays for that program, it's actually the insurance industry, because by cloud seeding and reducing the amount of hail, they reduce their damages to it. Just a little note.
So the idea is to bring it down as rain instead of hail, to just modify the conditions.
Yep, so most of the warm, pretty much all of the warm season cloud seeding is done through airplanes and flying, so they fly high up into the atmosphere, trying to get those particles to attach into smaller little components, so as they come down, they're not, golf ball size hail, it's, maybe something smaller than that. That is not my expertise, and it's actually been a while. And I was giving Jake a little bit of a hard time because he's here today, and he's actually is our cloud seeding coordinator. I'm like, you should have been giving this presentation. Once upon a time, I was the cloud seeding coordinator, so I have a little bit of background. So cloud seeding was originally discovered in 1946, and I imagine, I've heard this story, and I imagine, Dr. Schaefer, he's doing an experiment over this cold box, and he's getting, frustrated. He comes in late at night, and he's trying to do an experiment, and he's getting frustrated by it, and he leans over the box, and he goes, just sighs this big, breath into this cold box. And he notices from that little bits of snowflakes start coming down. So that was kind of the original discovery, and it went on from there. So really just to talk real quick about how cloud seeding works, we really got to talk about the water, the clouds, and snowflakes and how they're formed. So when air rises, it expands and cools, and if the air is moist, the cooling can result in condensation, and the condensation can form these little water droplets. And so we're really looking for this, what we call supercool liquid water. So this is water that is below freezing temperatures, but is still liquid. And then as this process is occurring, the clouds go over the mountains as that moist air rises. And so this super cool water is there, and then it attaches to some nuclei, so some little dust particle, bacteria. That's what kind of starts our precipitation fall, whether it's rain or snow. And so the idea of cloud seeding is if we add additional particles up there and we use silver iodide, then we can increase the amount of snowflakes that are falling out of the sky. This is an example. This is from Bryan Head of a super cool liquid water. So as the wind pushed this super cool liquid water across this ski lift, which I'm glad I wasn't on, it caused that ski lift to attach all of those little icicles to it and expand them. And so this is just a graphic of that. Most of the cloud seeding that we do in Utah in the past has been using ground-based manually operated generators. So these are generators that are in the foothills and intentionally sited as the different storm tracks come in, and as that cloud mass comes over with that super cool liquid water, we turn on the generators, or our manual operators do, and they run for the period of the storm as they're adding additional particles into it to increase the amount of snowflakes that fall out of there. So Utah's been cloud seeding a long time. We actually had a short project that we did in the 50s. So, the first time maybe that Utah was an early adopter of anything. And then that ran for a couple of years, but there was concerns over, well, who owns that additional water? So it wasn't until 1973, when the Cloud Seeding Act was done, that really provided some clarity on that and determined the ownership of the water is that it just falls as natural precipitation, subject to all the rules and regulations of the state. And it gave the authority of the Division of Water Resources to permit and authorize those projects, and we regulate all of the cloud seeding activities in Utah. So we go through a licensing and permitting. Currently, we have 2 licensed operators in the state, North American Weather Consultants and Emery County Water Conservancy District. We do have a cloud seeding suspension criteria. So at the end of the day, we are trying to help things, not harm things, so we do want to be mindful of the conditions on the ground and are currently looking at them every day as, for this year. And it's been a few years. We were talking about it since we've had to look at the suspension criteria because we never got there, but we are evaluating them. They also evaluate them based on avalanche danger, rain on snow events, all of those different type of things. So that's just kind of some general information there, and we do that regionally across the state. Here are our current cloud seeding areas that were targeted last year and are planned for this year. We have, like I said, the majority of them are manual ground-based generators. So those are all the little kind of dark blue, black dots on there. This last year, we did have one remote generator as well that operated last year and will operate again this year. That's up in the Hasenyager.
So can I ask a question? So are
Yeah.
those locally contracted individuals who are running these generators?
Yes, yes. So they are local people that we put them on their private land and they go out and operate them. One of our board members at the Division of Water Resources, Charles Holmgren, he's an operator that he'll go out and turn that on, and we have them, about 160 of them across the state who do that. One of the tricky things when you are reliant on somebody to be there and to turn it on is to have somewhere and turn it on. So you have to be in a place where people are at. So there are obviously a lot of places across the state that have not been targeted. And then if you look at kind of how the funding of the program works, is there has been an investment from the state of Utah through the Board of Water Resources of about $200,000 per year that we do a 50% cost share with the local entity. So of all of the different programs, Central, Northern, Western Uinta, High Uinta, Six Creeks, the Book Cliffs, and Emery County, we do a cost share with them. So roughly about $615,000 has been spent on the cloud seeding program this last year, and I have a graphic that shows how that's changed over time. We do get, you'll notice a column in here that talks about lower basin states contribution. So in the Colorado River Basin portion of Utah, the lower basin states does help to offset some of our cost, whether it's through measurement devices or increasing the length of cloud seeding, because most of the cloud seeding programs are run from December through the end of March. And in like the High Uintas, they increase, they add the month of November on. So those are some of the examples of what lower basin states have paid for. Yeah, like the remote generator they originally paid for, we own and operate it and pay for that. But so we are happy to partner with all of the different people to run this program. Here's a graphic over time, how the cloud seeding has changed, the state cost share, the local cost share, and then you can see in 2007 was when the lower basin states started contributing as well. A lot of people ask us, well, how do we know this works, right? And it is a little tricky because once you've cloud seeded, it's really difficult to know what would have happened had you not cloud seeded. And there's been a lot of efforts and studies, like Wyoming did a big extensive study where they were doing randomized seeding events to try to figure out the right mix and to try to come up with the estimate of it. What our contractor does in Utah is they do an annual assessment where they do a target and control analysis where they look at areas of the state that have been cloud seeded and those where there isn't any cloud seeding, not even in the state. Some of them you can see are outside of the state in different control areas to try to see the impact of those compared to where they have cloud seeded. And so they report their cloud seeding evaluation to us every year. And so through each of the programs, you can see, anywhere from 1% to 10% with an average statewide of a 6% increase in these project areas. So generally, the amount of investment and the benefit that we see, we think it's worth the cost and the return on investment to continue to do it. And with that, with the help and leadership of Director Ferry and the interest that we've seen, we are, in the current drought that we're in, we are looking for opportunities to expand that, Biggie Smalls might have said there's more money, more problems, but we're looking at it as more opportunities right now. North American Weather Consultants recently received a $1 million grant from GOEO, the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity, where they are able to use that to expand their manufacturing. They're working on developing additional remote generators. They are, hiring additional people, equipment, those type of things with that grant. So that's kind of kickstarting their ability to ramp up. We also put in a budget request for $5.6 million. Part of that is ongoing and part of that is one time. This would also include, Jake is amazing and wears tons of different hats and money for a full-time cloud seeding coordinator to manage this if we're expanding the program and intending to cover more of the cost share on it. It would include an aerial program. We were able to get one going this winter in southern Utah, so that is already going. The northern Utah one, we couldn't get the contracting and everything done right off. We're also looking at installing additional new manual generators to try to refurbish some of the ones that are already out there, and then put in additional remote generators as well. We have listed 40 here to expand our reach.
So question on, when you say aerial program, that's airplanes versus ground-based?
Yes.
Okay.
And we do see those working together, right? We're not, just because we have an aerial program in southern Utah, we're not removing our ground-based generators. There are times where, and I'm not the expert here, and we could have North American come in and talk about the differences, but there are times where you can leverage both to maximize the seeding opportunity.
So you see times when the area application can be more effective or less effective or complementary at least?
Complementary for sure, and the opportunity to, there are times where the storm is not safe to fly in and you wouldn't necessarily want to send a plane up there, so we're very conscious of that. But then there are also times where there's a lot of, the way the wind's blowing or whatever, it's more opportunity, there's more opportunity to use an aerial seeding craft versus an on the ground. And then you can see,
Are those, is that a fixed wing aircraft or a rotary?
Ooh, I think it's a fixed wing. Looking for Jake. Jake, is it a fixed wing, the plane?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought so.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. And then you can see in this map that there are areas particularly that we're looking at in the Great Salt Lake Basin where there are big gaps because we originally didn't have the local cost share in that area, or there wasn't a reservoir to capture that water, and so there wasn't a big incentive. But part of our goal is how can we just get more water to Great Salt Lake, and is there an opportunity here? We recognize that it is not going to solve the problem. This is not, if we do this, we're good, but we do see it as an opportunity to try to increase the amount of snowfall into our valleys. And I think that's generally what I have. Happy to answer any questions.
A quick question for you, just around the effectiveness of this and the actual water that's delivered. Actually, two questions. Are those studies available publicly if we were to point people to them? At DEQ, we are getting questions about how much water is being delivered. Is that something that we could direct to your website?
Sure, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I should have put it on here. It's if you go to water.utah.gov, and there's a link to the cloud seeding page, and we post all of those there.
Okay, thank you. And last question, as the temperatures have increased slightly, have you noticed a change in the output over time? As we're having more rain, less snow in certain parts of the state, there's more moisture, I guess, in the atmosphere. How has that changed if you've been able to observe that in at least your contractor and their studies?
Yeah. And I think generally we've still seen a positive effectiveness of it. Obviously, if there's not clouds in the sky, there's not opportunities to cloud seed. So during the drought, I think there has been diminished returns on it. But when we do get the storms, we do see it as an opportunity to get the most out of them as possible.
I'll defer to Marcel.
Oh, thanks, Warren. Just a question, and mostly this is just stuff I've heard, and I'm curious if maybe your studies show this, or you know of studies understanding how cloud seeding in, say, one part of the state might affect moisture in the other part of the state. Does that get taken into account? And maybe the percentages are so small it doesn't matter, but right now I think we're looking for any percentage, right?
Yeah, I think, so the studies that I have seen, or one of the studies showed that there was a positive impact of cloud seeding about 100 miles downrange, and then minimal after. There was no like big significant impact after that. So we don't see this as like, taking different people's water or taking water from one part of the state to give it to another. And it is, a small amount in the sense of the percentage, so we see it as just an enhancement of it. But based on the studies we've seen, we don't have any concerns about negative downwind effects.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Candice, the warm weather seeding, I was taught about cloud seeding by Dr. Norm Stauffer, way back when, and I'd never heard of warm weather cloud seeding, so thanks for teaching that today. But I would guess that, looking at the high incidence or high use of that in Alberta, Canada, in that province, it's probably to avoid crop damage.
Yeah.
And so I wondered if is there a need for that in Utah? Is that something that I would expect that we're not doing warm weather seeding in Utah?
We do not. We only do wintertime seeding.
And also I'd expect that if you're using fixed wing aircraft and you're attacking a summer thunderstorm, that might be quite a ride. So maybe that's not
they are
feasible.
brave people who go up there and do that.
Yes. Has there been any study on whether there's economic benefit to Utah going to warm weather cloud seeding? In our crop areas are fairly confined, fairly small.
I don't know of any studies to do that. I think generally Utah has been focused on the wintertime augmentation of it to, increase our water supply, but there's probably additional opportunities to look at warm weather cloud seeding, particularly as our temperatures keep increasing.
Yes. Well, maybe we should talk to the Vice President of Extension at Utah State University about that very thing. So, the other question...
Limits to what we can do.
Yeah, very true. All about FTEs and funding, isn't it? Let's see. Sorry, I allowed myself to lose track.
Moment?
Yeah, I mean, well, the question was you were able to model, and using control sites and such, a percentage increase. Have you ever converted that into how many acre feet of water per year we're getting in Utah's watersheds?
I just turned off my microphone. Yes, we have done a study. The last study was done in 2017, so we are looking at updating that study to more current and potentially looking at updating the methodology. And I don't have the acre feet volume right off the top of my head. I know it equated to, based on how much we paid and how much the estimated acre feet, it was about $2.50 per acre foot. So really
cheap water.
small. And so, I mean, that was part of the reason Director Ferry was like, well, if we paid $10 an acre foot, if we expand our program and paid $10 an acre foot, that's still really cheap water. So, but yeah, happy to get additional information out to you.
But that's water deposited at the watershed. That's not necessarily diverted water. Is that?
Yes.
That's fair to say,
yes,
isn't it? So our diverted
sure.
water might be a little higher.
Yeah.
But I'm waiting for the legislator who asked you, if we do cloud seeding, how many acre feet of water is that going to put in the Great Salt Lake? But if you have an answer, I'd be interested.
I don't. Maybe Jake does. Jake.
It depends on the weather, doesn't it?
Depends on the weather. I mean, there's a lot of factors, obviously, that go into cloud seeding and into our water supply in general.
Yes.
So it is tricky, but we think that this is a way to try to get the most out of the clouds that come by.
We have to think of it as a holistic program then.
Yes.
Okay,
exactly.
thank you.
Any other questions for Candice? Well, it's just neat, you know, we're always looking at this water budget that we have to work with and squeezing that as much as we can, and it's nice to actually add some to the budget, you know? And when we talk about weather modification, that's kind of a weird and cool term, but it's neat to be adding some to the equation. And anyway, appreciate the update and the information and the good works that are happening.
For sure, be happy to tell you what comes after the legislative session when we get there too.
Sounds good, and I'll watch for the crop dusters down our way, and, yeah. Well, thank you, Candice. Just wanted to note, I think we had Ricky join us online. Oh, she came and left, well, thanks regardless.
You still have a quorum.
Yes. We'll go ahead and go to Laura, and we're glad to have you here, and a little update on the Great Salt Lake activities, and we appreciate that. And certainly there's a lot going on, and I don't think that we certainly don't have a great grasp on everything, but we'd welcome your information. Thank you for being here with us.
Chairman, we've lost audio.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. The guy behind the wall. Good morning, everybody. My name is Laura Vernon. I'm the new Great Salt Lake Basin Planner for the Division of Water Resources. And Todd Stoneley asked me to present about all things Great Salt Lake, or kind of where we are with Great Salt Lake. And so I'm just going to give you a little snapshot. I don't know if you've heard, but Great Salt Lake has kind of captivated the world as of the last 2 years. I think it's, gained worldwide attention. We've done media interviews from Der Spiegel to Telemundo, Outside Magazine, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, you name it. Like every day it's a new, more people are inquiring about Great Salt Lake. And as I hear of people traveling the world, they say, they're asked questions about, well, how's Great Salt Lake doing? And what are people thinking and feeling about living in Utah with the condition of Great Salt Lake? So I'm here to just kind of give you a little snapshot of how we've got to where we're at and where we're headed. So I could spend a whole presentation on the importance of Great Salt Lake alone, but I'm just going to here really quickly highlight the ecological, economic, and environmental importance of Great Salt Lake. You've probably all heard that Great Salt Lake the importance of Great Salt Lake for migratory birds can't be overstated. It is critical for over 10 million birds that stop here annually. Some is traveling from as far north as the Arctic down to the tip of Patagonia in South America. As part of a critical Pacific flyway for these birds, we have the largest staging area of numerous species of birds here at Great Salt Lake, and even more important now than ever, because terminal saline lakes are drying up around the west and Great Salt Lake is larger than all of them, this habitat becomes even more important for those birds that depend on this type of habitat in their migratory journey. Also, in terms of ecological importance, we have the microbialites, which are reef-like structures that are in the lake, and they provide the food source for the brine shrimp and the brine flies. Those are significantly impacted right now. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the future. Along with the importance of the birds, important to the birds are the brine shrimp. They are the food source for many of the migratory birds, but the brine shrimp are also used in industry around the world. 40% of the world's brine shrimp eggs come from the Great Salt Lake, and they are used as fish food for baby fish and baby shrimp. So if you go eat shrimp cocktail in New York City or San Francisco, chances are pretty likely that your shrimp ate brine shrimp from the Great Salt Lake. So moving on, we have the industry. They generate over $1 billion of economic revenue to the state each year. They produce all of the United States supply of magnesium, and that goes into soda pop cans, cell phones, cars, airplanes. We have sulfate of potash, which is harvested through evaporation at Compass Minerals, and that is a fertilizer for high-end fruits and nuts. And then finally, we have increased demand for lithium. Perhaps you've heard with the increased demand for cell batteries for electric cars and cell phones. All that technology requires lithium, and we have a relatively pain-free way to extract lithium. We have several companies, 2 companies now working on producing lithium on Great Salt Lake, and a couple more who are interested. And then finally, recreation impacts are significant in Great Salt Lake. Although we don't have the full harbor here that you see in the marina. In fact, the marinas are dry and no boats are launching from the lake. We still have birding and waterfowl hunting, and these are important contributors to the Utah economy as well. So just kind of a snapshot where we are today versus where we've been. We've been tracking the elevation of Great Salt Lake since 1847. You can see here this dashed line. The historical average is about 4,200. And we are quite a bit off from that historical average, and it kind of scares me to bring up that historical average lately, as our current conditions are 4189.4. This is a significant improvement from where we were this past October when we reached the historic low, a new historic low of 4188.5 per USGS measurements. And then of course you can see the high was set in 1986 at 4211. So we've had 2 years where we've hit the historic low, or the old historic low was set in 1963. In 2021, we surpassed that. In 2022, we beat that. So here's to hoping we don't set a third record. Where does all the water that gets to Great Salt Lake come from? 38% comes from the Bear River. 32% comes from precipitation. Jordan River is about 17%, and Weber is about 10%. We see about 2 million acre feet come into the lake each year through the rivers, the contribution from rivers. And sadly, the last 2 years, we've seen around 1 million acre feet. I think 2020 was less than that, and 2020 was slightly more. So we have 1 million acre feet deficit each year for the last 2 years alone. That doesn't count the previous, decade where we've seen this, we've been trapped in this historic drought pattern. So we've got some acre feet to make up, and we have plenty of room for improvement, and certainly not this one great year is going to could help, but it's definitely not going to bring us back where we need to be for Great Salt Lake. Of top concern these days is the salinity of Great Salt Lake. As you know, the lake is bisected by the Union Pacific Railroad Causeway. The north arm, Gunnison Bay, that's about 25 to 28% salinity. It really doesn't fluctuate much from that because once it reaches 28%, the salt precipitates out and it's just in the bottom of the lake bed. But in Gilbert Bay is where we're most concerned about the salinity. Right now, the salinity is about just under 19%, and that's worrisome. It's worrisome for several reasons. You can see the matrix on the right-hand side of the screen is the salinity matrix that the Salinity Advisory Committee developed. This Salinity Advisory Committee was created in response to the creation of the new causeway breach of the Union Pacific Railroad, and they were tasked with coming up with an ideal range of salinity for Great Salt Lake. So based on all of the resources, the brine shrimp, the microbialites, the biota, all of the things that depend on salt in the Great Salt Lake, what is an ideal range? And the ideal range they came up with was between 12 and 16%. So you can see now we're well above that, and we are without a doubt seeing impacts to the resources because of the increasing salinity. And I will talk more about those in a little bit when I talk about the solutions to reduce salinity. So that was kind of a snapshot of where we are at in terms of conditions and historical data, but now I want to talk about all of the players that are involved in Great Salt Lake. As you know, there's not just one entity in charge of protecting, restoring the lake. It takes a village, and it takes a village of state, federal folks, as well as universities, industry, nonprofit organizations. And this graphic is a new graphic that is on our new website. I'll give a shout out to that a little bit later, but a great graphic that just kind of illustrates the complexity of Great Salt Lake with the state agencies responsible, different mandates, different missions, within Great Salt Lake and the watershed. But then in the core of it, you have the Great Salt Lake Advisory Council. We've created a space for the Great Salt Lake Watershed Council as well to provide input and guidance for Great Salt Lake issues. And then all the little bubbles in the middle are kind of projects and groups that are involved in Great Salt Lake. We've got the Great Salt Lake Tech Team, the Great Salt Lake Ecosystem Program, the Great Salt Lake Strike Team, which is a compilation of university folks who are working to help protect the lake. And then you have several projects or initiatives that are going on that help guide the lake. You've got the Comprehensive Management Plan for Forestry, Fire, and State Lands, Ag Water Task Force, and the newly launched Great Salt Lake Trust. So all of these players are working together to protect the lake, and we're going to continue with the collaboration with these groups because we cannot do it alone. Laying the groundwork, so we were well poised when the lake reached its historic low last year and started gaining nationwide attention. We've done our homework and we know what the impacts of decreasing levels of Great Salt Lake are. The Great Salt Lake Advisory Council was the one who funded a lot of these studies, primarily driven the last 5 years, maybe 10. But we are familiar with what the consequences of other drying saline lakes are around the world. We know what the economic benefits of Great Salt Lake are, but now we know what the economic implications are. If Great Salt Lake dries up, we know what those costs will be. We've had several bills and resolutions run that are encouraging the protection of Great Salt Lake. The one showed here kind of prompted this HCR 10 working group that I'll talk about in just a second. But these, there's been quite a bit of information that has led us to believe the time is now to protect the lake and we can't wait any longer. This is the Great Salt Lake Matrix from the Comprehensive Management Plan from the Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Lands. I talk about laying the groundwork. This is really the OG or the original groundwork laid for Great Salt Lake. This just lays out all of the resources of Great Salt Lake, including like birds, wetlands, fringe and impounded, mineral extraction companies, causeways, you name the resource, it's in there, what levels of salinity are. And then, of course, green is good for a resource, orange is not so great. You don't need to read all this, obviously, but what you can glean from that is the sweet spot for Great Salt Lake is about an elevation of 4,200, where I said that historical average was that I don't like to think about too much. So that's kind of where our sweet spot has been. And this elevation matrix, when we did this plan back in 2013, we thought, so along the y-axis, is the lake level elevation. So starting at 4212, and then down at the very bottom is an elevation of 4188. And if you remember, I told you that the new historic low set this year was 4188. So we haven't really explored what happens to the lake below this elevation. So we know that many of the resources are compromised, but how low can we go? This is something that we received legislative funding for. DNR did during this last legislative session, and we will be updating this comprehensive management plan in due time. So the other kind of marching orders for The actions that we are doing right now are the 12 water strategies document that was created by water policy leaders, experts in the state and within the Great Salt Lake Basin, and the HCR 10 steering group. Both of these groups came up with these graphics that I like to refer to as my house and my honeycomb, but they're providing me kind of marching orders or guidance as we look towards strategies to get water to Great Salt Lake. And if you notice some of them are already in play. We've talked about secondary metering. I know you guys are aware of the secondary metering efforts, ag water conservation. There's been efforts in understanding more groundwater management. We have plans underway to increase education and engagement opportunities. We're working on shepherding water to Great Salt Lake, increasing monitoring and telemetry to do that. So anyway, this is kind of the marching orders that have led to last legislative session, which, ta-da, people like to say last legislative session was the year of water, but I secretly like to say it was the year of Great Salt Lake, because I was completely astounded by the amount of support and love that the lake got. And I think I think we're on track to have those all that love again. But just to summarize, I could again spend a whole presentation talking about the funding for Great Salt Lake this past year. It was $500 million in funding. Some of the ones that received the most attention are obviously the Water Trust. $40 million was allocated to set up a water trust where people will be able to acquire water rights for Great Salt Lake, as well as do ecosystem restoration projects. I won't go over all of these, but integrated water assessment, that's a project that I will talk about in a second. That's why I'm now here at Water Resources to work to coordinate that program. I mentioned the agricultural optimization, secondary water metering, the comprehensive management plan update to explore the really low lake levels. We have additional law enforcement on Great Salt Lake now to deal with dust issues and trespassing. And let's see, the causeway breach modifications, which I'll talk about. And we have marina dredging in order to get search and rescue boats out of the harbor, which they can currently not leave. We're looking at dredging the marina at Great Salt Lake State Park. And then, of course, the in-stream flow update, which really changed water law that allows the Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Lands to hold water rights for the lake for use on sovereign lands, which we have not, or which the division hasn't been able to do forever. So, all right. So just to touch really briefly on the Great Salt Lake Integrated Plan, I see this as an opportunity for the Great Salt Lake Watershed Council to be involved during this process. But this is a result of Representative Miles' Bill HB 429, where we're tasked with, the Division of Water Resources is tasked with developing and implementing an integrated surface and groundwater assessment for the Great Salt Lake watershed. This has never been done before. Great Salt Lake Basin is super complex. There is not one standard, people aren't using one tool that fits all in terms of measuring water for the Great Salt Lake watershed. So this will help streamline and kind of gather all of our eggs in one basket, so to speak. The bill requires us to develop a water budget and also requires extensive stakeholder engagement. So we've contracted with Jacobs, and they've got several subcontractors that they have got on board, and we're developing the work plan now, and will be finalized in 2023. During the time of this work plan is where we will begin stakeholder engagement, so you can look for opportunities to weigh in and participate here in the near future. And then the final plan will be before folks in December of 2027. Just a titch more on the integrated basin plan. We know there's been a ton of work done on Great Salt Lake. I talked about that already. There's the state water strategy. All of the advisory council studies, USGS and UGS are engaged in a bunch of studies right now. Millions of dollars was just allocated to the Saline Lakes program to look at saline lakes around the West. So it's imperative that we coordinate with all these groups because not one group has all the answers. And it's like all of the groups in the watershed may have bits of the piece or the puzzle. They may have a puzzle piece or a 5 puzzle pieces, but we need to bring all of the pieces together to create this, to finish the puzzle, right? To understand more about the water in the Great Salt Lake watershed. And I'm happy to announce in December, right before Christmas, we had an announcement that the Bureau of Reclamation is going to fund a Great Salt Lake Basin study. And so that study will kind of fit or nest in with our integrated water assessment, and we'll make sure that the requirements for both studies are met. But we will have a integrated plan on steroids that we'll be working on in the coming years. And the ultimate goal of that is to have a resilient water supply, both for the Great Salt Lake itself, but also, and then the growing communities around the lake. And then here are all of the partners that have graciously signed up to be a part of the study. Like I said, this is a collaborative effort. It's going to be all hands on deck. And I think, again, the Great Salt Lake Watershed Council would be an important asset in that as well as you get going. One of the final exciting and very timely projects that is underway is the causeway breach modification. As I mentioned, the causeway that bisects the lake, the north and south arm, is the way that we can control salinity in the south, well, in the north and south arm. But with the high salinity rates of 19%, we were interested in stopping or minimizing the super saline water from the north arm flowing into the south arm. And so this past summer, we had folks out, when this breach was created in the early 2010s, it was purposefully created to be adaptive. And when it was being created, we didn't quite think it would be needed to be used so soon, but here we are in 2022, or we were in 2022, with the ability to modify this structure to our benefit. And so we filled the breach with 4 feet of fill, and that stopped the flow of the super heavy north arm water from moving south. And while we saw significant impacts super quickly, salinity levels continued to rise, as we thought they would, because it wouldn't be happening overnight. But the push is there now still, because we're continuing to see the adverse impacts to brine shrimp, brine flies, microbialites, and also to lake level in general. So the push now is to just completely block off this causeway breach. And that work is underway right now. The Division of Forestry, Fire and State Lands is leading that charge with the Army Corps, and Water Resources has helped us do a little bit of the designing for this. But they will place fill up to an elevation of 4192 and completely stop the flow of the exchange of water in the 2 bays. So with the hope of decreasing salinity in the south arm and also raising the lake level, that's secondary to the salinity. So, and this can be walked back or track hoed back relatively quickly. It's not going to take a lot of time to get in there and make these changes. Once we feel the salinity levels have reached a level that's sustainable, we can go back and take out this fill and allow the exchange to happen again. And another exciting thing that is happening for Great Salt Lake is the division, or the Department of Natural Resources and the Department of Environmental Quality just launched, or just completed, I don't know if it's fully launched yet, but this new Great Salt Lake Hub website. It's like all things Great Salt Lake. You can go here for basic information, but then also links to more details on environment ecology, the actions like current legislation, what resources there are for the lake, what studies are happening, who's involved in what. You can go here to get all that information. Also links to the current lake levels, links directly to the hydro mapper where you can see lake levels and salinity. And that's at greatsaltlake.utah.gov. And we'll be doing a full release of that, I think, in the coming weeks before the session. But it was a lot of hard work by folks, and so I'm super excited to have just more opportunities for people around the world, really, who have so many questions about Great Salt Lake. They can come here and find some of the answers. And with that, I just wanted to say, I think, based on what Candice said with the cloud seeding in the 2023 session, I was just in a meeting where we were talking about also the expectations and financial interest in supporting Great Salt Lake this next session. So I think we can look towards 2023 session similarly to the benefits that we saw in 2022. And so we'll be happy to come back and talk more about all the exciting things happening on Great Salt Lake in the future.
Very good. Thank you, Laura. That was great. You have a great job, and obviously you're passionate about your work. Looks like you have some great stuff and great partnerships there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Laura?
How much time do we have?
No. Thank you, guys.
Are we? Well, Mr. Chair, I hate to be the one who steals all the question time, so I'm still going to defer to anyone. Once again, we'll defer to anyone who wants to run ahead, but I've got quite a list here for Laura.
Jump in with a few. Thank you.
Well, thank you. One of them, thank you, Laura. Yes, I'll echo what our chair has said. Your passion is showing. Thank goodness. Do you sleep?
No, I haven't really been sleeping.
Okay.
It's been a rough couple years. So.
Yes. Just astounding the amount of activity, and it's in a way it's refreshing but equally daunting, isn't it?
Exactly. I mean, I've gotten to the point where I am often nervous to open the newspaper or to look at the news because it's just something else is happening. I mean, it's just constant motion, and there's constant happenings with the lake, right, Marcel?
So, going to the kind of the high points first, I hadn't anticipated that a lot of your time is being absorbed by interest from around the world, although I do have, we all have contacts around the world that are asking questions about Great Salt Lake.
Yes.
It's pretty astounding. Since we're in the Watersheds Council, what role could this council contribute to your efforts at this point?
Well, I think at this point, I'm not 100% sure. I think as we get going and start asking for data, experiences, what tools you may have, what your partners use for monitoring and measuring, things like that, I think we would be asking for that. Any lessons learned that you've had in terms of understanding groundwater or just experiences with evaporation, just the base, anything you want to throw at us, we'll take it. So I think that will be coming back to you when the engagement process has started with the work plan and ask for more pointed things. But I think this group is a great, could be a great resource. And even if it's just hearing from people across the state, even though they're not in the Great Salt Lake watershed, learning about their experiences would be helpful for us.
We'll look forward to that. I don't want to assume your prerogative, Mr. Chair, but I think we could all look forward to that. I've heard it described as sort of an emergency effort to try to manage salinity this year. Thank goodness the sky is our friend for the last few weeks. That should help, but as I've heard it described in some detail, the need to try to manage salinity in the South Arm and maybe get some tools on board that could be used if that becomes necessary. I'm kind of talking in circles, but that hydrologic cycle thing, if enough water falls and we get enough runoff, then the lake may have its salinity controlled by nature. nice
Yes,
outcome.
yes, please.
But if not that, are you prepared to comment on what other things we might want to be considering for salinity management in the South Arm?
I would ultimately defer to the experts on the Salinity Advisory Committee, but I know that there has been talk of, I don't know, diking or other sorts of, the creation of bays to manage salinity in different impoundments, so to speak. So, but that's very preliminary, and where those structures would even go is not known yet, and something that we can be exploring in the coming, I mean, we don't want to act like we've got lots of time. It's something that would need to be addressed right away, and I think the Salinity Committee is concerned about that.
Yeah, seems to be one of those things that's a genuine emergency.
Yeah, yeah.
If I've heard the 4192 level mentioned, is that a target level of some sort? Is there? I've heard Candice Hasenyager and Bonnie Baxter and others speak to that, but is that a target, or is it really the target salinity, or is the 4192 kind of a litmus test of whether we've diluted the lake enough to manage the salinity? What does 4192 mean?
The matrix that I showed earlier, that kind of illustrates where, a lot of the resources at that elevation are okay. They're not super happy, but they're surviving. And so I think an elevation of 4192, 4195 is kind of where we would like to see things, but I think we all hesitate to say there is a specific target elevation, because it may be a target elevation for one resource but not for another. It may mean salinity is at a certain percentage one year, but it's not the other year for whatever reason. And so I think shying away from a target elevation is good, but people are curious about the elevations in which the lake is happier, and it's definitely a good 5 feet above what it is right now. And when generally the lake each year comes up about 2 feet, also recedes about 2 feet, but this past year, the last 2 years, it came up a foot and less than a foot, and so you can see we're not going to be making that 5 feet gain anytime soon. Even in the highest, wettest years, we had like a 4-foot increase, and so in the 80s, so we need lots of like good years like 2017, 2011 in the 80s to bring us back to that 4192, 95-ish.
That's a lot of water.
It's a lot of water.
Yeah. Well, I wondered, your presentation is very helpful. I was looking at what did you call it, your house and beehive slide?
Honeycomb.
Honeycomb, house and honeycomb. Thank you. The alliteration should help us remember that. But the base layer in that was, I'm trying to recall, the base layer in the house figure.
Oh, hold on, I just closed it.
Yeah, you had 3 foundation stones in that, and the bottom one.
Marcel, do you have that memorized?
As I recall, it was water rights oriented.
It was more about the framework.
So yeah, recognizing the right to conserved water.
Thank you. That's.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of happening in large part with HB 33, where it is determined that water can go to the purpose, or go to Great Salt Lake for purposes of the Great Salt Lake. It's a beneficial use to have water in Great Salt Lake.
Yeah, I'm going to offer the state engineer sitting behind me, so I can't watch her body language as I mentioned this. But the last Water Task Force meeting did include the beginning of organizing a work group, or actually augmenting an existing work group, to look at that, recognizing the right to conserved water as an element of helping manage the Great Salt Lake. So The reason I mention it here is not to put the state engineer on the spot, but to urge support for that effort.
Thank you. I would appreciate that too.
Thank you.
And I think that, you know, the other parts of the house to shepherd the water is, I think it's one thing to, you know, have these farmers optimize their water use, but then how do we make sure that that water gets to Great Salt Lake? So now is the problem, or not the problem, the working to understand how that water makes it to the lake and make sure that it gets where it's intended to is what we're working on next. We've got these programs that are helping optimization and saving water, but how do we make sure that saved water gets to Great Salt Lake?
Sure. We had a full-day workshop on December 20th with Farm Bureau on that very point, and I think the only thing that's safe to say at this point is there's a lot of uncertainty and questions.
Yes.
So we have a lot of institutional work to do to get to where you've got some tools to work with.
I would be interested in discussions or hearing those reports from the Farm Bureau at some point.
I'm going to just offer that as my mother passed away last month, and so now the library that my parents had built was being reviewed, and we found a 1980 volume published by the USGS on the comprehensive analysis of Great Salt Lake, circa 1980. If you haven't seen it,
bring it by.
All right. Well, Mr. Chair, I'll quit asking questions, but you get on with the meeting.
Thank you. One question I would have is, there's a lot going on with the Great Salt Lake, and is there, or if there were an opportunity for like just a one-day opportunity to get out on the ground or to get your arms around a bunch of these issues, I don't know if I could make it, but I'd love to hear of an opportunity and see if I could participate just to understand things better. And I guess if there's something like that, if you could let us know and share information like that out to our council, I think that'd be good information for us to take advantage of if we have those opportunities.
Would you want to do something like that at a future meeting, like in lieu of an in-person meeting, or would it
I don't
be
know that
like-
we could do it in lieu of our meeting. I'm just thinking if there's a
after
field
meeting.
trip, if there's something organized that people could come and tag along, I would relish the opportunity, and I think it'd be great to invite people if possible ourselves.
In addition to that, I would just mention there are a few things coming up that you might want to put on your calendar. There's always the Great Salt Lake Bird Festival in May, which is actually a really great way to get out and see things that otherwise you might not be able to. If you can get registered, you got to move quick to get registered. And then also
How do we do that?
What's that?
Whose website do we look at for that?
It's run by Davis County. It's part of their economic development arm, and so there is a Great Salt Lake Bird Festival. But I'm happy to get an email over to you all. And then in March, the Wallace Stegner Symposium that is put on by the J. Quinney School of Law is hosting a Great Salt Lake. That's the topic of the symposium. And again, that's not necessarily exactly what you're looking for, Corey, but certainly those are some opportunities that are already there that you could take advantage of. And then, I think if there really was an interest, I would be curious, if there was an interest for the Watershed Council to actually do something out on the lake as a educational opportunity, I think we'd be happy to work with the state to try to make something like that happen, because I think it's really valuable. So.
Please share those links with Todd or directly with the council.
I will. Thank you.
And will we be asking Laura to be on our next agenda as well?
Are you ready for another presentation?
I don't know if we'll have info for the work plan, but when is your next meeting?
April.
April. Oh, well, we should be moving on, and so at least a brief update, maybe not like a presentation, but
Okay.
something.
We'll plan an update. Thank you.
Count me in.
Thank you. We know where you live, right, Todd? When you're not sleeping.
Yeah.
Andy's here, so he's able to.
What's that?
Andy's here.
Oh, okay, perfect. I guess next I'd first like to look at the discussion on the advice. So our next agenda item is to discuss advice to the governor and legislature on water issues. You can go to the division's website, or maybe you are familiar with it already. Todd will share it. In 73-10G-305, it defines the role of this state council as it refers to there. The state council is directed to, and then if we drop down, let me see if I lost it again. Okay, there, F. Okay, Todd's gonna.
What section?
7310G305. So scroll down. Okay, keep on going down. Right there, stop. Let's see. Okay, about a third of the way down, put your cursor up there to F, if you wouldn't mind, right before the 2. Yep, provide advice to the governor and legislature on water issues. So along with our responsibility to set up local councils, we've put together a bunch of templates, just a bunch of things to facilitate that. We're actively going out and working with the local groups. We've got the Langdon group, good things going on there. But we've got this clearly outlined as one of our responsibilities. So advice to the governor and the legislature. Let's look at the governor first and maybe point to some of our executive staff here, if I can, as to, and I think this could take place in a bunch of different ways, right? And probably ways that are simpler and more complex, maybe ways that are more effective or less effective, I don't know. But what occurs to you, if I can, Kim, as far as working with the governor's office and providing what information we might have that the governor's office doesn't have? Sure.
So, Commissioner Butters, myself, and Jill Ferry, often advise the governor on water and water quality issues. And so there is an existing pathway. But you caught me a little bit off guard. I'm trying to think here how, I guess my advice would be simple is better.
Yeah.
There are opportunities for those that serve on this council to communicate directly with the governor and also look for opportunities where he may be interested and find ways to engage him in our work. So I guess I'm open to suggestions, but I'm thinking outside of our normal pathway, probably we want to be cautious in how we approach the governor. He has, especially this time of year, many priorities. And so we really want, when we bring something to him, we want to make sure that it's one of our top priorities and really needs his counsel and input.
What about, is there a member of his staff that might be a good liaison and a filter, or somebody that we could just engage with and as a mechanism there?
Yeah, there are numbers. One person that comes to mind in the governor's office of planning and budget is Laura Hansen, and I know that many of you are familiar with Laura. She's done a lot of work in the water space and has been the leading effort on the governor's coordinated water action plan, and so she's very aware of water issues. She is someone that could work closely with Sophia DeCaro on some issues if we wanted to run them by her. Recognizing that this is a public meeting, I hate to throw out other names and volunteer others, but I do think there are a couple of others that we could discuss or consider depending on the topic. I think that's going to be important. There isn't one person that can filter everything for the governor. There are just many mechanisms that we can take advantage of.
Thank you. Other thoughts? Chris, do you have any thoughts there?
No, I think this is a little on the fringe side for emergency management, but I mean, we have our paths. We have an emergency management admin council, which is chaired by the lieutenant governor and the commissioner of public safety, which might be a forum to present something. We've had some different water discussions, but typically more on the side of snowpack and water and and flooding, so kind of on the opposite end. But that's one pathway we use to have an audience with the lieutenant governor. Beyond that, we've had opportunities in the past to meet with the cabinet to discuss different issues, and I don't know if that's an opportunity to maybe at the executive level to make it a cabinet level discussion.
You know, that's a really good point, Chris, if I can just interject quickly. We do have sub-cabinet meetings, and we could easily get on the agenda, both all of our agencies that are on the council serve in the infrastructure sub-cabinet group. So that's a really great suggestion.
I guess as a starting point, would it be just good for the governor's office to at least know that we exist, it's functioning, and we're working at the state level and at the local level to try to get things going?
Absolutely.
I don't know if that would be a good starting message and the best approach to share that, or what thoughts?
You know, it might be worthwhile, Mr. Chairman, if you're amenable to this, to get on the governor's calendar. Craig, Joel, and I could arrange that, and we could have a brief conversation with the governor and discuss some of the things that have been happening over the past year. Yeah. So I think that's something we could definitely do after the session.
I think that'd be great. That sounds like a good approach if we can follow up on that.
Okay, absolutely.
Yeah, I was just going to mention too, Corey, is there any requirement, I can't remember in the code, for a report to be presented? Because I know a lot of our committees have requirements to report to a committee or to somebody.
Yeah, go ahead.
Item 2, right below it says that.
State Council shall provide updates on the State Council's activities annually or as invited to the Natural Resources, Agriculture, and Environment Interim Committee, secondly, the Legislative Water Development Commission, and the Utah Water Task Force. So yeah, an expectation there would be an annual report or as invited to those three entities.
Yeah, I think those are other good opportunities as well. And yesterday we had one of the committees we oversee is the Grid Resilience Committee, talking about power issues and how to protect those. And they actually voted in their committee yesterday to provide a written report to a few different committees that were in the statute, as well as some additional ones and the governor's office. So, I mean, I don't know if that's an opportunity to just present them with a written summary, probably something not too in-depth, but something they would take a few minutes to take a look at. And so I think that's another option to look at.
And I suppose our written summary doesn't have to be really extensive at this point. What would be the best time to submit that report to, I'm thinking the Water Task Force, Water Development Commission, natural thoughts, Todd?
Yeah, they usually meet in November, have a lot of water stuff on them, but the Utah Water Task Force meets a lot more frequently than that. They could get on their agenda at any time. But yeah, typically November is a good one for the legislative ones, and the Water Development Commission included.
Go ahead, Warren.
Mr. Chair, I can report that there was an issue that came to the Utah Water Task Force that I presented, and I put a pitch in there for the Watersheds Council. I asked Executive Director Ferry if he wanted something more formal than that for this year, and he said, no, that will do. So, for better or worse. Also, I sit on the Legislative Water Development Commission, and did discuss with the chairs there. There's been a number of presentations that involve this council in the I always forget the name of it. I'll just call it the Water Development Commission. And I asked Senator Hinkins if he wanted something more elaborate, and he said, we've discussed it enough for this year, but look forward to next year, which I think is helpful. And I don't know that anything's been done with the Natural Resources, Ag, and Environment Interim. May I go further? Sure. Thank you. It seems we have kind of a maturation process. The strength of this group is, as I see it, is twofold. One is that we have a broad shareholder representation on this council, and I think we've accomplished that. The broader aspects of it, though, is to have the local councils formed up so that they feed into this council, and then the information and issues and so on that are I mean, that's bidirectional. Information comes from them, information goes to them. It seems that we may not have quite become what we want to be when we grow up. Yes, in the sense of getting the local councils organized so that can come forward. The bigger question, if you want to move to it, is on legislation. There was a very interesting provision plugged in by Office of Legislative Research and General Counsel in one of the water bills this year. Specifically, Representative Albrecht's draft bill on what is it? The emergency reprioritization of water rights. And that's not the name of it, but that's the topic. The paragraph that was put in said that the governor is encouraged, or the governor shall, when setting up a water emergency declaration, use existing staff, organization, councils, and so on, rather than create a new one. Suggested the Office of Legislative Research and General Counsel, that ought to be in every water bill this year. Quit creating new councils. Let's work with the ones that we have and coordinate through them, because we keep, as we multiply these different councils. Now, that's not to say that anything is superfluous or unnecessary, but let's make sure that we don't increase our communication cost. So if I'm not going to try to put words in your mouth, Kim, but if I were in your seat and had to think, all right, how many new water groups do I have to coordinate with now? You wind up using a lot of resource to do that. And this, if there's one thing I'd suggest we watch the legislature for this year, is don't reinvent the wheel. Let's use what we have and give this and other groups that have been set up time to mature into this a full functioning group. So I think it's marvelous to have this discussion. I guess I haven't left you with any information other than, are we still trying to work on what we're going to be when we grow up? And you're helping guide us to that. I strongly support you in doing so.
And maybe as a follow-up, maybe part of our other message, to the governor's office is, hey, we exist out there, and use this as you will, and it's a resource.
I was asked to do almost an impromptu presentation to the governor. I was asked, can you be at 4 o'clock at night, can you be in the governor's office at 8 in the morning and talk about these sort of things? And I did give him a brief presentation on the Watershed Councils Act and the clearinghouse function, or the dispatcher function, that the Watersheds Council, and he received it very positively. I noticed he stopped and asked a lot of questions and took notes. So to that degree, he's aware of it, but knowing how many things go through the governor's mind in the course of a day, a week, a month, reminders wouldn't hurt, would they?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
If I may, I can certainly reach out to Laura Hanson and invite her, or talk about this discussion that we've had and wanting to have some communication with them. And certainly invite her to the next council meeting and ongoing if she's agreeable to that. Or even Kim could reach out to her and invite her to attend our meetings, and I would make sure she gets on the distribution list so that she gets those invitations.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to work with you on that, Todd, and we can figure out how best to coordinate with Laura, but I think that's a good suggestion.
Thank you. I think that's a great approach. Marcel?
I don't know if you're wrapping up this, but I kind of see it fitting closely. I just have a question. In terms of thinking about future agendas as well, I just wonder, and maybe we can't do it because it's not listed on the agenda, but I just wondered if there was an opportunity to talk about that, because Laura it would be great to have that discussion and kind of how that fit in. I think there are a couple of other big things happening that are probably worth bringing to the attention of the council if they're not already aware of them. And then, I guess because that sort of fits into, I think, what we're trying to figure out is, what really is the role of this larger council, and giving advice to the governor is maybe challenging unless we have a clearer sense of where the council's going. So anyway, just wanted to throw that out and and ask if there's a place on the agenda today just to talk about future agenda items.
I think you can bring that up, or if you want to bring that up offline, we can look at agenda items for the future easily enough.
Yeah, I just didn't, I thought maybe just even a quick discussion where there's, not offline, but just.
Yeah,
just
if you want
people could
to
weigh
mention
in.
some things, I think
But
that's great.
I didn't want to jump ahead of the governor and legislative discussion, so it just seemed like there was a connection.
So maybe just like a really quick wrap up. So we looked at this and it sounds like that with the interaction we've had with the Water Task Force and the Legislative Water Development Commission, and we appreciate representation we have there, that we've probably done enough for now, it sounds like, but maybe in November we follow up with some sort of a report. It sounds like maybe a little bit of follow-up with Natural Resource Ag and the Environment Committee. We still need to maybe do something there. And follow up with the governor's office, with Laura. Does that sound like we're on a good path with where we need to be? Is everybody comfortable with that? Yeah, Teresa.
Can I just make one comment?
Sure.
Just regarding just a quick comment regarding the legislative meetings. I know that November is kind of like the crunch meetings, and sometimes you can't get on the agendas. So maybe having the report ready September or October might be better to actually be heard and have time. So just a suggestion.
I'll echo that. I was in a meeting with Representative Albrecht yesterday, and this topic came up in a different area. And he reminded us quite pointedly that you don't have to wait till the November meeting.
Good point. Well, we'll look for it prior to November, and we can follow up with that. Marcel, go ahead.
Yeah, I wondered, just in terms of the Education's Council, and maybe it's not where this council wants to go, but because we already have the Colorado River Authority of Utah, but given the negotiations that are going on the Colorado River for future operations management, I wonder if at some point in time it wouldn't be useful and beneficial to invite Amy Hawes to attend and give an update to the group. And then also, I think at one of the future meetings, the Great Salt Lake Watershed Enhancement Trust would be willing to give an update as well. And then following the legislative session, I'm just wondering, I mean, we'll get an update, I'm sure there'll be a discussion, but you know, what flows from that and how that affects the work of the council would be helpful.
We'll definitely plan on in our meeting after the session is to get an update on all the legislative activities and approve things. But I think those are great topics. We'll follow up on those. Thank you. All right. Next, can we go to Andy? Can you come up and give us a little update on activities with local councils and how things are going? Thank you.
We're here so I can see you. Apologize for being a bit late. It was a real bear getting out of Cache Valley this morning. I came down here, it's all sunny. Nobody's going to believe that. So yeah, just some brief update. I was told about 5 minutes, Todd, so it will be brief. But on the local watershed councils, in the last several months with kind of the kickoff of the Great Salt Lake Integrated Basin Plan and increasing national and international attention on the Great Salt Lake, we've experienced a lot more interest and push to really get these things, the local councils, up and going after there was a little bit of a encouragement to kind of pump the brakes for a while. So we're doing that now, and starting with the 5 local watersheds for the Great Salt Lake. Starting at the top of the state there with Bear River, we've met with the counties and a number of stakeholder groups, really pulled everybody together up there. We have a list of, it's currently about 24 names, not kind of nominees, unofficial nominees for the council. We're going to increase that list probably to about 30 with the others that we have, the stakeholders that we've got to finish meeting with. And we're starting interviews with those to kind of gauge interest and availability. And then we'll convene that group to narrow it down a little bit more and then get that council really up and running. We've got we've shown them and discussed with them the organizing documents that this council worked on in the summer and the fall. And they're ready to get going up there as soon as we narrow down that list and get the participating members going. So anticipate that, depending on availability for interviews and meetings, to be able to get that up by, in the next, by end of February, March-ish, 1st of March, kind of where we're going for there. There is the Cache County, or the Northern Utah Water Users Meeting on March 8th. That may be a target to be able to find and convene that, or at least pull them all together. So, Weaver River, a little bit behind the bear as far as that goes, but the same process. We got our list of names there is about, I think it's about 14 to 16 now. Looking to talk to more people again. A lot of that will be done at the symposium this week, Weaver River Symposium. So we'll be doing that, and kind of a similar timeline there. I imagine that'll probably lag a few weeks behind, but that's getting close as well. We've talked with Morgan, Summit, and Weber counties on there, and are getting their nominees as well. We have them from Weber County and Morgan County waiting on Summit. So the other two there, Utah Lake, West Desert, they're behind that process. We had paused those a while ago. We're picking up where we left off there. Similar process. Jordan River, had a good visit with Soren, couple just before Christmas and then last week as well. He's a great supporter. The board, his board is looking forward to being able to certify the JRC as the Jordan River Watershed Council. Just process with that, we have a robust list of stakeholders that were in the Jordan River watershed that we're talking to make sure, just trying to get their feedback, make sure there's no real red flags with certifying JRC, and kind of bringing everybody on board that way. So that process, we're looking to have that done by February 2nd, and then we'll kind of present the results of those interviews to the Jordan River Commission's board meeting on the 2nd is the target, and move forward from there. And then if that works and that goes well, they'll be coming to you for certification shortly thereafter. So that's really where we are on those 5, and we'll get those 5 up so we can get the Great Salt Lake Watershed Council convened. Got a meeting next week with folks from DWRE and the area specialists there. And we'll kick that part off too, to start pulling those names together and be able to convene that, hopefully concurrently with these others. So there you go.
Great, thank you. Appreciate the progress. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Questions? Yes, thank you, Marcel.
Would it be okay if I ask a quick question? I was trying to pull up the statute and I can't grab it right now, but just curious if I recall, and I don't remember the exact language, that for each of those 5 watersheds that are tied in with the Great Salt Lake watershed, there's also a representative.
Correct.
For the Great Salt Lake.
Yes.
And I was curious how the process of identifying that those probably multiple individuals, given the number of watershed councils, is going.
The process for those local councils to designate their representative to the GSL?
How the Great Salt Lake representative can be chosen to sit on those councils in the early stages before there's a Great Salt Lake Watershed Council.
Yes, well, and that's one reason we were trying to get these locals up and running before the Great Salt Lake. I don't know, I think we're gonna do it more concurrently. And as soon as they're up, that'll be their first order of business, these local councils, is to designate or elect, or however they choose, a representative.
Yeah, and I thought it was vice versa too, right?
Oh.
Am I misremembering, Warren?
Yeah, what do you say?
I can't find the statute.
Yeah, I've got my mind.
Well, I can find out later offline. I just was curious.
I'm looking at the section
Okay.
now, and it looks like I agree with what Andy said. It looks like it could run concurrently. We should probably ask our legal counsel that too.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
Warren, could you please repeat that for the recording?
Well, I'll do my best to recreate it. I'm looking at the statute as Marcel's asking the question, and it looks to me like the formation of that council could run concurrently with formation of the other councils, so that then as the other councils are organized, it can be plugged in. The representatives from each of those 5 watershed councils that are part of the Great Salt Lake watershed could then be plugged in to the ongoing organization effort. Was that responsive to your question, Marcel? I'm looking, let's see, just for reference, I'm looking at 7310G 306 C and D.
I thought those other watersheds, all councils, the basin, the basin rivers councils also needed to have a Great Salt Lake representative on their council, so that was my
That's correct. Yes, they do. That is correct.
And my question was how that was going to be.
Got it.
How that position was going to be chosen in the interim when there might not be a Great Salt Lake Watershed Council. That was my question.
That is a good question, Marcel. We'll have to be a little more intentional about that one specifically as we try to stand all these up concurrently in the next few months.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I wonder if we've created a feedback loop in 1A, 1C and 1D there. We may need to fix that. Let's talk offline about that.
Oh, right, that sounds good, because I think it's feasible to do it existing, but just, okay.
Todd, can you follow up with some legal interpretation on that and provide that to Andy and the group and coordinate with Marcel?
Yes, I will make sure that happens.
Thank you. Okay, Todd, I think you're next. Recommended actions for public awareness?
Yeah, I'll keep this short and sweet. Just wanted to let you know that we have some new tools available to us at the division. We have purchased Constant Contact, which is an email subscription service, and that we can plug anyone we want into and actually open up to the public for people to subscribe to get notifications. So for this council, we were thinking that we would add all the council members to it. There's different ways of categorizing them, so we can use Constant Contact to notify whatever subcategories of people in that group we want to. So we would add you to that as council members, and if we wanted to just send council members a notice, we could use that service to do it. But the broader purpose of it would be to advertise on our website and other places that people who are interested in learning about what the council is doing and when they're meeting can subscribe to that email group. And when we send notifications of the meeting with the agenda and so forth, we can make sure those people receive a copy of that. We can, in the interim, in between meetings, we can send out updates or anything else that we want to let people know about that the council is considering or going to be doing, or recently, actions that they took, and that just notifying them through that service of what's taking place. So that's just an idea, and I'm hoping that we could have approval to kind of work with the chairman on that, how it works, and what interim type of notices we might provide, etc. But with that, we also were thinking of maybe some branding where we create a logo for the council, just a simple one that tries to incorporate what the council is about, and run that by you for approval before we start using that. But then in those notifications, we would include that as well as on our webpage. So just a few ideas, and if council members have any ideas for us how to communicate and spread the word about your efforts here, we're open to those as well. So no action needed, but just if you guys agree to that kind of concept, we'll work on it and work with Chairman Cram on some of the details, and maybe have something next meeting where we could say this is what we plan to do.
Sounds good. Any comments from the council? All right, please. Yeah, Warren's giving you the fist bump. Yeah, please move forward. That sounds great. And do we need to commission, like 6-year-olds to draw some logos or something? And they do better than the rest of us usually. All right. At this point, we juggled our agenda around, and we have some minutes from our previous meeting, October 5th. Those went out a little bit late, but they did go out. to the council. Has anybody had the chance to review those minutes?
Mr. Chair, I've glanced through them during the course of the meeting today.
Okay.
They were issued while I was driving this morning. I didn't think it was a good idea to try to read them then. But two observations. One is that the minutes are very good, like the minutes of the prior meeting. They're excellent work. There are a few little items that I think we could correct offline that would clean them up just a bit for consideration. So rather than run through that in the meeting here, I wonder if the chair would be interested in just tabling the minutes until the next meeting.
I'd be happy to, and given the fact that I don't know that we've had an opportunity to give them due justice.
I'll submit that as a motion to the chair.
Okay, so we got a motion that we delay that approval to our next meeting.
I'd second that.
Yeah, table till the next meeting.
Thank you. So second from Marcel. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Do we still have a quorum?
You've lost everyone. You don't have anyone online anymore, so you only have 5 members present. It's not a quorum. I think you have 14 members, you have to have a majority, right?
So I guess we can't approve tabling it, but at the same time, we can't approve of the minutes. So was that kind of the same in the end?
It's tabled by default, right?
Okay.
The two roads lead to the same place, don't they?
Yeah, okay, so there we're at. We're wrapping up. What's notice of our next meeting? Do we have a date for that?
Let me look for that. I don't have it on the top of my head.
While you're doing that, can I just go to our audience and ask if there's anybody who would like to step up and just give a brief minute? If you want to say anything to the council, you're welcome to. Is there anybody who would like to? Well, you're the perennial commenter. Do you want to say anything?
Good.
You're good this time. We appreciate.
She gave a great update.
Well, thank you. We appreciate you being here, and we appreciate the good things that are happening out there. And Andy, with your efforts, and Teresa, thanks for attending. We're glad to have you here. Anyway, good things are happening across the state, and Utah is a great place to be. I think we have great people and a good can-do attitude, and despite big challenges we face everywhere, good people are making good decisions and working well together, and it's nice. It's nice that we see that despite big challenges. I think it's a great place to be and great people to work with. Todd's working hard, almost there. I don't know if I have that. Oh, I left my notebook in my pickup. I had it.
I believe we confirmed the dates in our October meeting.
In the minutes?
That's April 12th. Okay, thanks. 9 a.m.?
Yes.
9 a.m., April 12th is our next meeting. And I see that we haven't sent an invitation out to everyone on that. We'll do that soon. So it shows in your calendars.
Okay. All right, so next meeting, April 12th, 9 a.m. here at the same place. To the man behind the scenes, Paul, we appreciate all your help with the IT as always and making all this happen. I can't conceive of what it takes to do that, but you always make it happen and take good care of us.
Carmen McDonald also.
And Carmen as well. Thank you. Appreciate all the water resource staff and the help that we have and everybody here. So we'll look forward to seeing everybody April 12th, and we'll probably try to make sure we have a little more numbers so we can be a little more functional, but appreciate everybody here. I'd accept a motion to adjourn.
Well, I'll move to adjourn, but we don't have a quorum. Does that mean we have to stay?
That means we're here till April.
Well, I second if we need it.
I think that's about the best we can do. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody.
Yeah, well,